50 years down the line, and Zambia is still grappling with issues of energy. Efforts are being made to facilitate easier supply of fuel and electricity to needy areas. How is this working? Welcome to News in Depth, and on today's program, Pennipher Sikainda gives a spotlight on how Zambia is adopting to renewable energy.
Climate change, let's go green, eco-friendly, and alternative energy are some of the most debated issues on the tables of the world leaders and those championing the cause to save Mother Earth.
How about we eliminate our dependence on fossil fuels?
Let's bring in that zero-waste garbage system.
We can lay grass and trees instead of roads.
And continue to drink the best tap water.
And breathe the cleanest air of any major city in the world.
Let's eliminate our dependence on internationally supplied food.
And feed ourselves with fresh and healthy local produce.
The Green Energy Campaign has been one of the most advocated programs in the 21st century. The campaign emerges out of concerns related to climate change effects. Assessments show that one of the largest drivers of global warming is carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel combustion, among other industrial activities. A number of countries have since taken up clean and green energy as alternative to reducing carbon emissions.
Everybody I talk to that has tried the biodiesel says their engine runs better than they've ever seen them. Because biodiesel has a lot more lubricity, so it lubes the engine better, so you don't have that diesel knock that people normally hear in a diesel engine, because it just runs so much smoother. So there's no question biodiesel is really good. The bad part is that people have gotten a bad taste with biodiesel is because people trying to make biodiesel out of old used vegetable oil. A lot of times there'll be grit or something in that old oil that can get in and affect the fuel pumps and stuff. But running virgin vegetable oil when we're growing it here, we don't have that problem. I love it.
In Zambia, the Green Campaign is still in its infancy. Zambia's population has continued to grow. So does the demand for energy. Energy requirements for fuel and electricity have substantially increased. National Fuel Consumption Assessment further shows that consumption of petroleum products increased significantly to stand at over 793,000 metric tons. Renewable energy seems to be the answer in bridging the power supply deficit that Zambia has been grappling with. Is Zambia ready for large-scale use of clean energy?
So far, if you look at the status of our renewable energy in Zambia, the utilization is quite low. But however, the government has been putting measures to ensure that we enhance the utilization of renewable energy.
What about the options like bioethanol and biodiesel?
We have agricultural crops that can feed into biodiesels, crops such as sweet sorghum, millet, maize, and sugarcane. If you look at other countries like Brazil, they've actually gone green because they are harnessing the power of these crops, which can be actually processed to produce ethanol. Then we know that ethanol would run electrical appliances and small machinery as well. So really in Zambia, abundance potential is there. We have the potential for renewable energy. But the issue has been the will, I think, because 50 years down the line, if we do not have a policy on renewable energy in Zambia, then I think people should question themselves, say, how are we going to develop renewable energies without a clear policy?
What are the policies governing this transition?
The ministry has also come up with the prices, which are yet to be announced, for biodiesel and bioethanol. The government has already announced they will starting like for diesel. Biodiesel, it will start with the blending at 5%. And then for ethanol, the government is starting at 10%. Also, ministry has worked on the issue of the standards that all those producing biofuel should conform in line with the requirement.
Zambia has from time immemorial survived on hydropower supplied by ZESCO. However, others are surviving with alternatives. This gas stove runs on biogas. For the last 3 years, Martina Beck-Schneider has been using a simple biogas technology at her home in Lusaka's Kalundu area. It has proved to be efficient and reduced her electricity bills significantly. A visit to her backyard shows that this is a simple technology that amazingly runs on household-generated waste.
This is basically an example for a domestic biogas digester. This is the intake where organic waste from the garden as well as underground from the toilet is fed in. So any organic waste like leaves, grass cuttings is going in here, plus of course my kitchen waste, because I separate organic waste from other waste. This goes in here. Here is the underground dome, which is basically 1.70 meter hemisphere like this. And this is the overflow, because what happens in here, organic waste is broken up into gas and a liquid component. So the liquid component comes out on the other side. This is very valuable liquid kind of fertilizer. So this brownish water, which doesn't have any smell anymore, can be used in the garden to water the lawn. So I'm at the same time recycling my grey water, and I save water. Yeah, and you can see here, this is safe because it's treated long enough underground. So this is just brownish water which doesn't have a smell and which is safe to be used in the garden for watering.
Martina is the managing director of Southern Biopower Company, working on biogas projects in selected parts of Zambia. She is leading the example by using household waste to promote utilization of renewable energy.
There are different systems of biogas technology on the market. If you look worldwide, there are different concepts. The technology and concept we promote here for this region it's called underground fixed dome digester. It looks like a hemisphere and it is built underground basically from local material. So you can use farm bricks, pen bricks, cement, so there is nothing sophisticated. The advantage of this technology, we think it's adapted to these conditions. It requires very minimal maintenance because it's built underground. So there are no moving parts, no heating system required, no stirring devices, like in more sophisticated biogas systems like the ones you see in Europe. So this is really adapted to local conditions and can be basically constructed anywhere. So at the moment
this biogas alternative is one of several renewable energy options developed and being used around the world, not only to bridge energy needs, but to champion the green campaign. The options include thermal, biomass, wind, as well as hydro-generated power that Zambia has thrived on for many years. But it seems hydropower may not be sustainable for a developing nation like Zambia.
When we look at past experiences, roughly the whole country we use about between 1,800 to 1,900 megawatts, the whole country. But at the moment, I think it is being overstretched because we've got new industries coming up, new households coming up. Even if we said we maintain hydropower generation, still I think it will not be able to help us. And we have a few players actually who want to invest in hydro. And I think no wonder we decided that we go solar, because we have people who are readily available to invest in solar energy.
Players have come on board to try and develop renewable energies, but I think they are doing it in isolation. Okay, there isn't a plan that has sort of come up as an implementation plan of Zambia of how we want to actually harness the power of renewable energies. And I can give you an example. If you look at the Vision 2030, the SNDP, and the National Energy Policy, they all have components of renewable energy. And the common theme that they actually talk about is finding ways and means of harnessing other power potential of energy. So it's like hydro has been given focus in all these documents, but renewable energies are actually mentioned to some extent. And I think it clearly shows that there is no implementation plan, there is no M&D plan to actually monitor what has been developed so far.
Yes, hydro is renewable, but what has tended to happen in the energy sector, when you're discussing renewables versus conventional forms of energy, the large hydro projects where you're producing large amounts of power, say 100 megawatts, 50 megawatts, and so on, are not considered renewable. But when you're talking in terms of renewable, you're talking in terms of 10 megawatts and below, at least for the Zambian perspective. We're looking at 10 megawatts and below as being renewable. So yes, hydro is renewable in its definition, but we've broken it into two for the purposes of administrative management of the sector. And also others from an environmental perspective do argue that the larger the project is, the greater the environmental impact it has, and therefore not renewable from that perspective. So yeah, there's that distinction that has been made.
According to the Department of Energy, Zambia is steadily taking steps and shooting the arrow in the right direction. They are championing the use of renewable energy. It is a tall order, but not insurmountable.
It's our belief, looking at how the sector is growing, I think in the next few years, renewable energy will contribute vast to our energy sector. And it being an environmental friendly type of technology, I think it will go a long way in terms of environmental issues, and also in terms of propelling economic issues.
It has been observed that the solar energy has viability in Zambia. It is also a costly venture, despite all the positive benefits associated with it.
It's working.
The opportunities have caught the attention of the Swedes, who are among the leading countries championing renewable energy programs around the world.
So our idea is to come here to Zambia and to grow up here and stretch out here in the country. Together in these three companies, we will stretch out with solar farms, small solar farms, bigger solar farms, and also we talk about street lamps and everything around solar energy. It doesn't matter if it's a small package for one house only, or it's big for a village or for the whole country to mount at the grid. Even if we not have the same portion of sun as you have here in Zambia, of course, but we have perhaps 6 to 8 months where the sun is shining, and why don't take care of this? It's, as I said to people, up till now it's free. You never know, but up till now the sun is shining and it's free. And there is a lot of power there, both for taking care of the power, the electricity power, but even for heating water. Because when we talk about this for houses, it's not only the electricity, we have the hydropower, which means that you combine the electrical power with also heating water in the same panel. So that's a new thing.
Rural electrification accounts for less than 1% use of electricity, with only 900 megawatts available from an off-grid system. However, this figure is expected to grow within 24 months owing to bigger projects in place.
For the wind and the geothermal, we haven't developed it to a level where we can say we are now tapping power. For wind, for example, speaking for Rural Electrification Authority, we are looking at a possibility of studying an area somewhere on the Bangweulu swamps where we feel probably the wind speeds will be fast enough for us to be able to generate power. But we need to do studies so that we are able to select the appropriate or the right, in terms of sizing, the right size of equipment. And our hope is that we'll be able to generate power from such type of arrangement.
So far, the Rural Electrification Authority has spearheaded several projects using solar power.
We've been working on solar, especially in chiefs' palaces. I think that is one particular application. Also in public institutions like schools, rural health centers, where we have gone out to install. Like I said, the precondition is these have to be far away from the national grid so that there is no conflict between the grid and solar. And also, the other characteristic technically maybe that you can look at is the loads, meaning the requirements for power in these areas is quite low. So they can be met even with things like solar. But if you are going to talk about industrial applications, maybe where people want to drive motors, or running machines that demand a lot of power, then solar, unless you use a lot of it, has challenges in that particular area.
These rural power supplying options are assisting in the provision of social services, much to the joy of beneficiaries.
For a very long time, since independence of this country, this facility was denied us. This gesture will go a long way in improving the living standards of my people and those in Mwanza Chiefdom. May I also thank RIA for the job well done in electrifying the line from town to Chona Primary School. Electricity is a strange utility to most people in my chiefdom. But in time, all will learn how to use it and its various functions in domestic and the external uses.
What then needs to be done to upscale these alternative power supplies?
It is important to look at waste not just as a problem, but as a very important resource. So especially organic waste, as I explained, can be turned into energy, as other wastes can be recycled. But this, of course, requires quite a lot of public education, public awareness, so that people understand that they have to separate waste and that they have to treat waste in different ways so that they can be seen as an important resource.
The Policy Monitoring and Research Center digs deeper into the subject.
The issue of commitment will come in, because I think as long as we do not have a plan that guides how renewable energy should develop, it will kind of be hard. If you look at hydro, for example, hydro has got a laid out plan. There is a plan of new projects, and there are other projects that are going to commence, for example, next year, and all that has been put in place. So for hydro, why are things moving smoothly? Because there is a plan, there is a policy that guides hydro. We have the Electricity Act, the Energy Act, the Petroleum Act. So all these acts put together, they actually guide the hydropower sector. But when it comes to renewable energy, we haven't got a plan per se. But I think the fact that we have the resources in Zambia means we are ready. Now, the issue of commitment comes in. And what can we do to solve that? An enabling environment has to be created. Like I mentioned, I said, resources have to be identified and mapped. There should be information readily available that would help would-be investors. Now, if we do that, then definitely anyone who wants to invest would come in and find information readily available.
The industry players know too well what is needed to improve performance of this sector.
I hope that government embarks on a national program to look into waste and turning waste into energy using biogas technology and other technologies.
The only challenge that we might have is the issue of rates, because so far I think we don't have a framework that has been put in place to regulate or maybe to give clear guidance on renewable energy. But the ministry, I think, is working so hard on it, and I think very soon we might have a guidance. But so far, so good.
As late as 2011, Zambia lacked documentation on available renewable energy sources other than hydropower. Has this changed 2 years down the line?
The ministry, through the Department of Energy, has come up with the draft strategy that spells out exactly how we are going to achieve what the intention of the policy is. And further to that, the ministry, with the Ministry of Commerce, has included a number of incentives under the ZDA Act for those who intend to invest in the renewable energy sector in Zambia.
Brian Mwanza is in charge of renewable energy at the ERB.
Biofuels were not catered for in the definition of fuel in the Zambian sector. But what the Ministry of Mines, Energy and Water Development did is they amended the Energy Regulation Act to allow for biofuels to be included in the definition of energy, allowing the ERB to regulate it. So in that respect, it is a piece of legislation that adapts to new developments that are emerging. And if any new forms of energy are discovered in the future, there's always the opportunity to amend the Act and allow for the regulation of the new forms of energy. That said, the ERB, in collaboration with other stakeholders, does from time to time develop and revise existing standards just to meet the growing demands within the sector for new forms of energy and also the emerging sectors that are in the energy sector.
Has the ERB revised its licensing system to cater for this new segment in the energy mix?
What the Energy Regulation Board has done is to use a light-handed form of regulation with regard to renewables. The reason for this is because it is new, it's in its infancy, so you don't want to immediately impose very strict or stringent measures that would discourage investors in the sector. So the ERB uses a light-handed form of regulation. That said, we do not compromise on safety and environmental aspects. Safety is very paramount because you're dealing with energy sources that, if not handled well, could result in injury or damage to the environment. So on that aspect, we don't compromise.
What are the prospects for growth of the renewable energy industry?
So we know that we're talking about sources that can actually sustain us for a long period of time. And I think we still call for will from the government, especially from the policy level, to come up with a policy that will guide an implementation plan that will be clear for everyone who wants to be involved in the renewable energy sector to know what is required of them. From the business side, they also know what requirements they have to fulfill. And I think that information has been lacking, and probably that has affected the development of renewable energies in Zambia.
Renewable energy is eco-friendly, and eco-friendly means saving Zambia and the rest of the planet from the devastating effects of climate change.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's program. Please join us next week at the same time, and remember to send us feedback via Facebook and Twitter. I'm your presenter for today, Yotam Mugara. It's goodbye for now.